Hi everyone, I can see you all stepping into the room. Lovely to see you back again. Numbers at the moment, 5 of you join us, so hopefully some of the same faces from the last couple of days will also step in. In order to make a start, I'm top of the shop today. I want to talk to you first of all about whether you had a chance to take a look at that video that I recommended to you, which is from Accenture, and it was called Inclusion Starts with I. Did anybody get a chance to see it? Yeah, Delphine, you did. Right, great. Thumbs up from you. Anyone else got to see it? I'm just going to look around the room. I'm looking at the chat to see if you pop that into chat as well. Let me just screen share something where I have grabbed some of the comments from the people whom Delphine you saw on the videos. So let me just go there if I can. There we are, that's what I want. Share that one. And let me do it on slideshow from the current slide. Okay, so hopefully you now all are seeing being an inclusive manager. And you can see there, Delphine, I hope you agree, some of the phrases that individuals who were speaking to camera were saying, and it was about the degree to which they felt part and parcel of the team of the organisation. So I won't read all of them out to you, but I'll just try and give you a flavour. Top left, it's the unease of walking into a meeting where no one else looks at me. Can you imagine all those heads down and you've just walked in? How would you feel? Look at that one, the bright green one, roughly in the middle to the right. It's the anxiety of how others react to my difficulty. Another one, top right, the annoyance when colleagues presume I am less committed to my work because I am a mother. So a whole host of those phrases. And I will bet that within your own teams, there are people who are kind of represented there by those phrases, whom we need to think about including through our behaviours as a manager. So I'm just going to stop that particular screen share now. And I think I may have another one ready to load for you. Let me just see if I have. It's a Word document that I thought was sitting here. Oh, I can't find it now. Isn't it always the way? Let me just go back to it and see if I can get to it this way. Okay, let me try again. Now I've found it. I don't think I can. I'm going to be thwarted on this occasion. Oh no, there it is. There it is. Okay. So this morning, as I was doing my prep here in the UK for this, it's now my afternoon with you. For some of you, I know it's not. I also found this image, which is, it's focused on equality, but I think it's rather sweet. It's equality and a pair of shoes, all right? So equality is everyone getting a pair of shoes, okay? Diversity is everyone getting a different type of shoe. Equity, though, is everyone getting a pair of shoes that actually fits, because those other two, the first one and the second one, might not actually fit. Acceptance is understanding we all wear different kinds of shoes. And then look at this last one with that really big message about us as managers. Belonging is wearing the shoes you want without fear of judgment. And that for me has a sense of you as a manager creating an atmosphere such that people can bring their whole selves to work with all of those specialities, both in terms of skills, but also in terms of seeing and reading the world differently, as we each do. So let me stop that screen share. If you want to grab that as a picture, please do. It's freely available out there on the internet. And if you just pop into a search engine, equality through a pair of shoes, it will come up on some of the very early things that you found there. Wonderful. So if I stop the sharing, I'm just looking at some of the chat that's come in. So, oh yeah, a number of you did see it. So somebody says, you think you saw the power of diversity? Maybe, Frey, maybe. In fact, I think I already have the particular link, which I rechecked today. I do. So let me copy it into the chat box for you all in case you did miss it, and then I know that you can all get to it. Okay, there you go. There it is. So then I'm seeing some other comments. Yeah, watch the video, and inclusion increases performance of the team. It certainly does. Yeah. Okay. Super. So thank you for that touch base with where we were yesterday. I'm now going to more formally start today's session. I'm going to do so by screen sharing. Here we go. I think it's this one. Let's try it. Yeah, I may have to escape the one I'm in before here we go. That should come down. Sure. Yes, I can see I'm in the right one now. So you can see that today's subject matter is going to be about managing from the middle. And where does that fit into the whole grand scheme of our direction? Here we are. It is almost in the middle of everything that we are doing. We've looked at you getting your head in the game through that case study. You've been looking very much yesterday at competencies of being a positive manager. And now we're going to be exploring, well, what is it like to be a manager? Because we are the meat in the middle of the sandwich. We report up, but we also have people reporting to us. So how is all of that going to be working together? So our general direction, our objectives are to understand, therefore, the importance of intent versus how something actually lands, what the influence is. We're going to be looking at effectively communicating up and down. And towards the end of our session together, I'm going to get you to prepare some personal strategies around influencing in your own environment. So applying some of the things that we will by then have covered. You know how all of this works. Now, in terms of our housekeeping, we do our very best to start and end on time. We are present here in the room. Keep your cameras on where your broadband is strong enough to hold it, and more so particularly when we are in the breakout rooms, because I think you will find it very helpful if you can actually see each other when you're in breakout rooms. It makes working together, I think, more smooth. I think that you have all helpfully got your own names on the on your name tags have been updated to how you are registered. And again, please engage with us. We've got an illustration here. If we're going too fast or too slow, tell us. But I'm really delighted, thank you, with the level of engagement that you are doing with us. So let me dive into this stuff around managing from the middle. Pop into your chat boxes any reactions that you have got to the picture that you are seeing. What does this picture say to you about managing from the middle? Just going to let that happen a little bit. See what comes in. What does this picture say to you about managing from the middle? Lovely things starting to come in. So Marisha, a tough balance, yes. See, prayer, that's exactly how I feel sometimes. It's exactly how I feel sometimes as well. Absolutely stretched apart. There's no more give. Oh, being a bridge. Oh, wonderful, Edison. You've now put a positive spin. So look at this poor person. I'm not sure if they're smiling or grimacing, but you've actually seen that as a bridge. That's fantastic. multitasking. So wonderful comments popping in and hanging on for dear life. Shakil, yeah, that's super. Wanting to be supportive to report, but also receiving conflicting asks from higher ups. Seems a bit too extreme. Well, in a way, Stuart, I hope it is extreme, and I hope it's the exception and not the rule. But in order for us at least to get into this as a conversation, I think it's already generated some of the challenges that we might face. So managing from the middle, it is perhaps the most challenging position to actually be in. We always have someone to whom we report, and we always have others who are reporting to us. And I think it's true to say that all of you do have direct reports, but I've run other sessions like this, where I've had people on the programme who are not yet in their first management jobs, and they've come on this programme to get them ready for their first managing jobs. And they have said to me, this doesn't apply to me at this stage, Andrea. And I've said, are you absolutely sure about that? Because most of us, even where we are in staff roles, have some responsibility for projects. And actually, when you are managing an aspect of a project, it's still a little bit like this picture and imagery, because we are having to deliver the project, and we are having to coax and influence people who do not directly report to us to actually do things for us to help us deliver. So I think it does apply even in those particular circumstances. And therefore, how are we going to get better at managing from that middle position? And I think that can only come by being slicker and more, and I mean that in a positive sense, and more comfortable with communicating up, down, and across, being better at that. There is a famous 19th, 20th century playwright, George Bernard Shaw from Ireland. And the quotation comes from him: the single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place. I know that when I'm running a program like this, that happens to me all of the time. You are great as a group because you're giving feedback through the chat box. So Shakil and I are getting levels of your input. But nevertheless, I might be deluding myself at any one point that I've spoken clearly, expressed myself clearly, and the point I was trying to make has landed in the way that I intended. And I'm sure that that is often not the case, because you each look and listen and interpret through your own lenses, and therefore there's going to be that difference within it. People's perceptions of us as managers are not solely based on our actions, though. They are also based on the roles that we play and the perception of those roles that we have. So it's about power hierarchies, and I think that came up in part of the conversation yesterday around power play, power politics that dominate in organisations. Every relationship we ever have, and clearly it's appropriate to confine that comment to the working environment, but I think it happens in the social environment too, has a power dynamic. And that it's that, as much as anything, that influences how a message is received. An image that might support that is here of a couple of, I guess now, really very old-fashioned pieces of equipment. Let me pick up my annotate pen. I like my annotate pen. Here we are. On the left-hand side, look at this very old-fashioned megaphone. So if I needed to address a crowd, that might have been how I once did it. And here we have an old-fashioned gramophone where we've got that very kind of famous trumpet style receiving dish. Effectively, that's what it is. And so the message is being elevated. So communications are hard. How we receive a message depends on the power dynamic And that is also exacerbated by something that we looked at yesterday, which was around remote learning. There were some very good examples from you all yesterday. It's also shaped by our own cultures, and those may be geographic cultures of the world and how we were born and brought up, but also in the socio-dynamic cultures in which we were born and brought up that affect some of that. So because of this, managing from the middle, we really need to think hard about communicating up and down. If I return to this image just very briefly, if an individual is in a position of power, may well have that manager part of their title, then quite often what happens is that power means that they become worse and worse at actually taking others into account. And here with the gramophone image that we have on the right hand side, ironically, the less powerful an individual is inside an organization, the more able those individuals are at being able to have empathy and see how things are and are being experienced by their own colleagues. Imagine for a moment being a manager of a team, and you observe, you get feedback that the team is getting a poor reputation from actually never delivering and never saying yes to things and never following through. And so you go into that next team meeting with a very clear message that I'm going to give you this is the feedback I've had. I'm really displeased about it, and I want us all now to turn into being the yes team. So listen to the way I've delivered that. I've actually shouted at you almost with this megaphone. There may be some people who would receive that, who would say, oh, that's scary, and therefore I'm always going to say yes to everything now. Problem is that if you do, as an individual and as a team, you're even less likely to be able to deliver against all of those things, because now you may well take too much on. So we need to really think about how our message as a manager is going to be landing. So, time for that first piece of group work today. I think I've got a group work image coming up. I have indeed. And you're going to be covering in this piece. Let me just get there. There we go. Yeah. What I'd like to do is to discuss a time. See if in your small groups you can identify and discuss a time when you have had a message that you were delivering distorted, or when you have found out that you heard and distorted someone else's message, perhaps because of that power dynamic. Okay, so they're your two tasks. Lovely, Anne, I've picked it up as directly as I can, so you pop that in very helpfully into the chat box. So everyone, if you would like to pick that up from the chat box, that would be great. And Anne, can you just shout out how long they're going to be in those groups, or pop it in the chat also?
They will be in for 6 minutes.
That's lovely. 6 minutes in there. That's fantastic. So take either of those two options in the chat box, which reflect the words I've just given you. And I won't go around all of the groups, but I'll just get some general feedback when you return. I'm going to stop sharing right now.
Okay, I'm sending you to your rooms here.
Yeah, super. Okay, so I will happily take any, if there were really some very good examples of distortions of messages that you would wish to share. Is there anything out there? Let me just give you a chance. Just use your reactions and pop up your hands if you will, and I'll happily then say, come on in. I'm just looking around the room. Yes, Emma, thank you.
Something that was super interesting in our group was myself, Morgan, and Moise all shared a similar experience of asking a coworker or colleague to do something, and then not really hearing from them for like a few weeks, and then them sharing back the thing you asked them to do and it being incorrect. So there's like an element of fear, perhaps, where someone is afraid to seek clarification and ends up kind of getting the message incorrectly. And that was a common element in all three of our experiences.
Very good, very interesting, yes. And maybe a point there to take is, particularly if it's new for someone, a new task, is it worth agreeing a check-in date with them to try and make them comfortable with coming to you with something that's only part developed, to get there for a green light or a nudge in a different direction? Might be a thought. Stuart, your hand is up. Please come in. You're on mute, Stuart.
I appreciated our group, and some of the themes that came up were working internationally and working in other cultures and other languages can be a challenge. Both Marisha and I expressed that. And then also when our communication is translated again, and as Annie was mentioning, the feedback she gives is then taken to someone else, and it is simplified, it is oversimplified to mean something that wasn't actually true, can also be an issue in communication.
That's another very good example. Thank you. Yes, indeed. Do you know what? You prompt me as well to share with you all that I, in fact, speak another European language fluently and deliver programs in that language. And for me, it's been one of the greatest enriching things of my life, because it's taught me about the way in which language is a construct, and that therefore it actually, people see things very differently, and it's very built around the language and the way the language literally works in our heads. But I now know, because of that, oh, hang on, that may not be the way someone constructs that thought even in their head. So it helps me, I hope, to give some space for that in my management style, I hope. Super. Anyone else wish to come in? I'm very happy. I will take anything or not. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, sure. I was part of the group one, and so my point here is that sometimes when we communicate something to your team members, we assume that the message has gone through clearly. But I think that it's always good to elaborate more as much as possible, because sometimes the person may not ask for more clarification. And when the person goes to implement what you had communicated to the team, you may end up getting a different feedback from what you're expecting. One example is that if you're asking someone to discuss about the partnership engagement, maybe preparing some slides, and then at the end, the person reports highlighting what he's expecting as who are the partners to be engaged in future, instead of highlighting who are the partners who were involved in supporting the program or the activities.
Yeah, super, Moshe. Thank you very much indeed. Some excellent work there, everyone. So why does the mismatch happen on the occasion that it does? And I think it's that gap between intent and impact. Most of the time when it does, it's by pure accident. It's not through ill will, because we're all busy. And, you know, even while we're communicating, we may have that other bubble thought and you're dealing with something else. So when there's something really important to communicate, if we can clear those things to one side so we can focus, that would be very helpful. Thank you all for that. At this stage, I'm going to hand over to Shakil for him to pick up, and just shout when you want me to screen share for us, Shakil.
Thank you very much, Andrea. And I think it's very interesting, the points we've just finished off with. It does dovetail very nicely into this next segment. I just want to add to what you were just saying when it comes to giving messages, especially when those messages are complex and we're all so busy. There's the old adage, isn't there, about when you tell some people something, you tell them that you're going to tell them something, then tell them, and then tell them what you just told them. And if it's a difficult message, it's very often the case that you need to say not once, not twice, for up to 7 times for that message to really, really land, and then to check in that's actually been understood. Because again, there's a if you get into the habit, we talked about creating good habits around communication. One good habit around communication is creating the habit as a culture of just summarizing what you just heard. So it goes both directions. So it's not just you summarizing what you've heard, but you get the other person to summarize what they think they've heard from you. And that way you're more likely to walk away with a shared understanding. But things can always go pear-shaped for any number of reasons. So I'm going to ask you, talking about understanding now, I'm going to ask you in the chat, what do you think you need to know to understand your manager? What is it that you think would help you better understand your manager in the chat? What would assist you? What kind of things? How you can best support them, yeah. Thank you, Annie. How you can best support your manager, yeah. So finding out what's important to them. What are they losing sleep over? Yeah, we know what you'll know what you're losing sleep over on a daily basis, but what are they losing sleep over? What do they need from you? How can you best support them? Fantastic, Annie. Thank you. Do you know what their priorities are? Yeah, because again, they will have conflicting priorities. They might tell you one thing one day and tell you something the next day. But actually, they've got a number of priorities, and for them, in their head, it might be very clear what is actually really important, and it's 1, 2, 3. Unless you know that's what 1, 2, and 3 looks like, then actually you might be focusing on 4, 5, and 6. What their expectations are, yeah, exactly. It might be, there's a great expression that we used to, we became more familiar and comfortable with in one of the organizations I worked with. Done is better than perfect. So sometimes we'd get into the habits of trying to do things perfectly, but what was required wasn't a perfect finished solution. What was required was this piece of work done. And yes, it might be a little bit rough around the edges. It might need trimming up later, but right now, what needs to be done is the job and the task at hand. So very good, Moise. Thank you. Andrew, to understand their strengths and areas for development. Yeah. So what's the strong points of your line manager? What are they good at? What are they not so great at? So if communication, they're not so great at having, communication emails, and maybe, and their strengths are actually face-to-face conversations. Well, make sure you're getting face-to-face time with your line manager, because that's just going to assist them play to their strengths and address any areas that they still need to develop. Fantastic, thank you, Andrea. Stuart, working in the same physical space as my manager makes communication easier. So being in the same space, yeah, I think that ties in what we just said about the having that face time. Body language is missed in Zoom team calls, yeah, definitely. Understanding their management styles, excellent. Oh, I'm loving this. You guys are good. Who's running this course, me or Andrea, or you guys? I think we should be on the receiving end, Andrea. Just sit and learn from these wonderful people. So understanding their management styles, exactly. Everyone's got a go-to default way of working. And if you know what that default way of working is, then actually it's easy not to take things. Sometimes we take things personally because we have a different management approach. We will do things differently. But if you understand what their approach is, and actually that's what's worked for them, then actually that might help you flex your response in the future. Good, Stuart. So what can we as managers do to try to overcome this? So it's a great challenge back, Stuart. Stuart, what's your thoughts? Do you want to come on the microphone and give me your thoughts on this one? It's a great challenge, Andrea. Thank you.
Yes, in response to Andrea's question, I would say first be aware of what's not being communicated when you're not in a physical space, and then analyze what parts of those things that are being missed are important, and what are some other alternatives you can come up with to ensure that that is being communicated. If you're know what you're missing, and figure out the solutions to ensure that the important parts of what are missing are being resolved.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stuart. So one of the biggest signs that something's been not understood is when somebody stood up, a senior leader has said something, quite complex, maybe around a change program, maybe around a new project, and then asked the question, any questions? And there's silence. Now that silence is often taken by the leaders. Oh, that's good. Everyone's understood. No, they haven't. But it could be that, what Andrew was talking about earlier, that gap between the position of hierarchy. Nobody wants to be, go first. No one's brave enough to go first and say, actually, I didn't understand. And nobody wants to present themselves as being vulnerable and actually not appear to be, this delusion that we have of being professional and actually being honest and saying, actually, I didn't understand. Can you reiterate that? Stephen Covey, in his one of his 7 habits of effective managers, one of his great habits that he proposes is first, understand and then be understood. First seek to understand and then be understood.
Yeah.
So first seek to understand the other person. So thank you. Andre, go ahead, put your hand up.
Yeah, one of the things that I have sometimes done with that, presenting something to a group and anticipating that I'm likely to be faced with silence because this may have been a shock or a surprise to them, is I'll have a word with one of the party beforehand, and I will feed them or discuss with them a potential question that they could ask. Because as soon as someone has started asking the question, you'll get the floodgates open and you'll start to get some more interaction. So sometimes you just need to kind of nudge it along a little bit in a way. Give
permission. Yeah, I like that, Andrea. Thank you. And I think it's a great way to check in as well, the temperature in your audience, if you're in that situation. So Delphine, you've said make sure my manager, if he uses a more polished document or a draft one, not spending too much time when you expect some initial thoughts. Yeah, exactly. Exactly that point. I think it's, sometimes when we give feedback, we're too generic, aren't we? We will say that was a good report. We're not clear on what was good about the report. Was it good because it was, brief? Was it good because it had an executive summary? Was it good because it had graphs and bar charts? What was good about it? Was it good because it was lengthy? What was good about, so when we say that was a good report, or that was a good piece of work, that was a good project, we're not clear on what we mean by good. So it comes back down to the earlier point. I can't remember who it was now. Let me just scroll up. Who said it? Yeah, it was Moise who said it. About excellence. Having that understanding around expectations is so right. It's on the nose, right on the nose. Because then it's the old saying, isn't it? If you're not clear about which direction you're going, any path will do. And you can end up somewhere that you didn't intend to. And then that breaks down the communication, breaks down the trust, and you're just in a spiral going in the wrong direction very fast. Anything else from anybody else? Some great comments coming forward. Anything else from anybody else? Okay, so what you'll see on the screen now, Andrew, if you could share that, please, thank you.
Am I not sharing?
You did share, but then it vanished. It came up very briefly. Yeah, it came up very briefly. And I was just about to ask you if you could make it look bigger.
You want the workbook one?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Certainly. Right. Yeah, my apologies. Check it out.
That's all right. That's okay.
Right. I've now gone and lost it again now. It was there and I've now gone and lost it. Right.
So it's, for the rest of the attendees, it's on page 17 of the workbook that I'm going to be referring to next. And it's just another way of, everything that's been said so far is probably captured to some degree in this this little table that's been put together by Humentum. But what I'd like you to think about is not just understanding your manager, but also thinking about yourself. So looking at these headings, what are your manager's objectives and goals? What are your objectives and goals? Are they aligned? Is there alignment? Is there understanding on each other? So does your manager understand what you are striving to achieve? Having set your objectives at one point of the year, have those changed? Are they still relevant? Are they still important? Have the priorities shifted? Have the goalposts shifted? So having that understanding, not just of you understanding your manager, but your manager understanding what is important as far as your understanding is, will assist each of you to get to a better place of working together. Understanding your manager's stresses and pressures. As I said, what's keeping them up at night? What is getting that blood pressure, up and that heart rate going? Are you aware of that? Do they have we talked about being squeezed by managers. Are they being squeezed? Are they under tight deadlines? Is their manager particularly cumbersome for them? And are they just passing that pressure on down to you? What is causing the pressure in the system? So having that understanding can really help you get to a place of better communication with each other. And then being able to share with your manager what is stressing you. Where are you feeling pressured? Is it because of an impending deadline? Is it the resources of your team? Are they adequately resourced? Are they adequately trained? Are you trained? Do you need more development? What is causing the issues for you, and sharing that upwards? The next one, around your manager's strengths and weaknesses and blind spots. And again, sometimes a manager's just unaware of what's going on. It's not that they're bad people, it's just that they have so many balls they're juggling in the air, just like you. And they'll miss things. So what is it that you need to bring to their attention that you think they haven't noticed? How can you help and support them with that? What are they not noticing about you that you need to bring to their attention? So all of us will have, things that we naturally gravitate towards, things that we find easier to do, things that exhaust us. I like networking. I like talking to people, as Andrea knows. I can go into a room and I find that invigorating, and I will talk to anyone and everyone. I know others will find that exhausting, mentally, physically, emotionally draining. So again, understanding what works best for your manager, what works best for you, what are you naturally good at, can really help with that conversation get to a better place. So we spoke about expectations. What kind of relationship do you have with your line manager? Is it a good one? Is it in a good place? Is it all about the task? Is it about your needs? Is there a way to have that conversation and sit down and talk about those things? What do you need? What do they need from you? I did this great exercise once where we sat as a management team, and we did this exercise where we talked about what I needed from the other person and what I actually get from the other person, and then we talked about the gap. And that was quite an honest, and it was a difficult, robust conversation, but it was a very helpful conversation because, no surprise, the person I was having this conversation with didn't realize what I needed from them. And they thought from their perspective, they were giving me what I needed. And it's so easy to fall into that trap of thinking you've understood when you haven't, or they've understood and they haven't. So your work style, is your line manager a big picture type of person, like the detail? What kind of approach do they like? Do they like to read just the executive summary, or do they want to get knees deep into that detailed report? And with subsection 1, paragraph 3, think back to an appendix with multiple narratives and footnotes. What kind of manager do you have? And again, adapting your style so you flex your style so that you are more aligned. So that conflict that sometimes arises, not from being bad people, just from being having a different view of the world, and get you to a better place in terms of your working relationship. And communication style, again, we've touched on this already. Is it better to have things in writing? Is it phone calls? If you're having a conversation, one thing that might I always be very conscious of, if I'm having a conversation with somebody and they're not writing anything down, either they're relying on memory, which is great if they've got good memory, or not so great if I know that person. So what's your communication style? What's your communication style of your manager? Do they need to be reminded? In which case, maybe send them an email after the conversation, as a placeholder, not as a audit trail so you can fall back and say and play the blame game, but just so that you have something to both refer back to, if they're not that type of person to make notes. I'm hoping all of that is helpful. Is there anything that you think is missing from anything that we've shared so far on this list? What's missing?
From me, Shakil, not so much missing, but I'm just wondering whether a task you could consider doing is taking this page and at your next one-to-one with your own line manager, using this as a discussion piece. And again, if I relate this back to the case study that we started with, this might be something that Jane could actually use with her individual staff members if she had one-to-ones with them. Partly to say, look, I think I got things very wrong at the start, so these questions might help us understand each other better, and therefore and then build from there. So I've therefore put this page into the case study, thinking perhaps also as something you could each take away and use actively.
Yeah, definitely. So I think you're right, Andrea. I think it's been great for Jane in that situation to have used it with her team, but also Jane to use it with her line manager as well. So again, thinking about managing from the middle, using it in both directions. Yeah. People you manage, help them get to a better place, and the person who's managing you, help that relationship get to a better place. I think it's so pivotal and critically important. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you if you can.
Sorry, go ahead. Shakil, have you spotted?
That's all right.
In the chat, Gonza came up with the question. Shakil, would you talk a little more about? No, that's fine. Would you talk a little more about work style? Could you name a few, please? I mean, immediately off the top of my head, I think of managers whose work style tends to be directive and telling, so instructional. That's one style, and then you might also, there are a number of different products out there on the market, each that come with quite, high price tags, but there's a color wheel chart which actually looks at whether we as managers or individuals work through our emotions, or whether we work through logic, and they've got different colors. So those might be different work styles. What else would you pick up on there, Shakil?
I'd be probably inclined to do a personality type indicator exercise. So Myers-Briggs type indicator exercise, I found very, very powerful when I did this particular exercise with other members of the senior leadership team. And where I thought I had a conflict with my line manager, I realized actually we were just, literally polar opposites in terms of our our personality types. It wasn't that, I was right, he was wrong, or vice versa. It was just actually, we were just polar opposites in terms of our personalities, which meant I had to then make allowances for that. And by making allowances, I stopped seeing him as the enemy, and I actually started seeing him as a collaborator, because I recognized he had blind spots that I then complemented. So, again, coming back down to, this thing around, I'll share with you one of the mistakes that some of my team would make. And I would make, and I'd have this conversation very early on in my team. I'm a very friendly guy. I really am. I like being friendly. I'm a friendly manager, but I'm deadly serious about the work always. And not to mistake me being friendly as permission just to slack off or, treat the work not seriously. And that's never the case. I am deadly serious about the work. I'm very serious about priorities, deadlines, meeting objectives, strategy, all of that. And I realized, and again, as I said at the very beginning of this program, I learned from my mistakes. As I realized by being very friendly, and as managers, it's a very fine line between being friendly and being friends. Because if you become, if people in your team see you as a friend, then I've done investigations where they've fallen out with each other because they thought they're in a friendship relationship. And it's not. It's a professional business, polite, courteous, good relationship and trusting relationship. It's not a friendship relationship. So sometimes just being very clear about who you are as a person with your team can really make a difference to how others engage with you. Being very conscious of your management style, I'd say, if you're conscious of your personality profile type, if you're conscious of other people within your team and their personality types, you can really build a team of fantastic individuals around you. People who pick up your shortcomings. I'm a detail person, so in my team, again thinking about Belbin's roles, I would any report that's written will end up on my table. Can you have a look at this, Shakil? Because I know you'll spot it. There's something missing, and that was a strength. It's not necessarily, I didn't enjoy necessarily reading lengthy reports. I don't. I'd get a kick out of finding something that was missing, and being able to, complete this, the narrative. So I'm hoping that helps. Sorry, was it Gonza? Gonza.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gonza. So anybody else who's got a question on any of those points, or a contribution to make even?
While you're looking for that, Shaquille, let me just come out of this screen share and take us back to the PowerPoint, because
Yeah, sure.
I think
Thank you.
that will just help with this question actually.
All right. So I don't see any more comments coming forward. That's okay. I'm going to move on to the. Thank you, Andrea. So I want to talk about developing, managing that relationship. And it does come down to trust and confidence, and building that trust and confidence. And there's a great expression, isn't there, that trust comes on the back of a turtle and leaves on the back of a horse. So it takes a long time to build trust, but it's very easy to break that trust. And sometimes, it is down to any one of these items on this list here. By not having clarity around, understanding each other, can actually really damage that trust. So being conscious that, we also spoke about conflict on day one. When these go wrong, unfortunately, they head towards the direction of conflict. So being aware of that, being conscious of that, take the time to build those relationships, respect the other person's time. Often we will, I started getting into the habit of not just walking to my line manager's office and saying, can I have a word? And rephrasing that question into a question saying, have you got the time right now? Is this a good time to speak? And just, checking in that they've got the time to have that conversation with you. Respecting their time, respecting the fact that just as you're busy, they're probably busy. They're not being dismissive necessarily. It's just that the timing of, maybe you're approaching them isn't the right time for them right now. What else? Mean what you say. If you want to be trusted, mean what you say. Say what you mean what you say. It's a unspoken rule about being in the world of work, the power of language. And when you say something and you don't mean it, or you say something and you don't commit to it, or you don't deliver on it, expect trust to get broken. Expect that then to, whittle away at anything and everything that you're then trying to build. So I think we can move on to the next section, Andrea, if that's okay. And this is really around influence without authority. And we did touch on this, as Andrea rightly said. So I'm going to ask a question. If you want to manage upwards and downwards, and again, remembering managing upwards means you're not in a position of authority. You're not. They are. How do you then influence them without that position of authority? How do you do that? And it's very interesting. I'll share this anecdote, then I'm going to get you to do an exercise in the chat. I went to a, I don't know if you've ever been to the charity fair event in London, Andrea, in the UK.
I haven't, no.
You haven't? Okay. So the charity fair was a once a year event. And my organization, send around the brochure of the different, sessions on during the week. And we'd all book, different, individuals would book on those sessions. And I went and booked myself on a session called Managing Your Manager. And, I was a bit, because I was having problems with my line manager at that time. I was very conscious. I didn't want my line manager to even know that I'd booked on a course called Managing Your Manager, because he might take offense. He might, see that as a negative. So I booked on the course and attended the charity fair, and it was a number of, they're all 1 hour sessions. They weren't, full programs. They're all bite-sized sessions. And I went to the room, and initially I was quite shocked because I saw my manager sat in the same session. And, my first reaction was, oh my God, he knows I've booked on this because he knows I want to manage him. And then it dawned on me, he wants to manage his line manager. So whatever problems I'm facing, he's having a similar challenge with his line manager. And it does come back down to this question, how do you influence without authority? So in the chat, I want you to think about, how do you get to a place where it's a win-win for you and a win-win for everybody else, a win-win for your line manager as well? So in the chat, give me your definition of what is authority, and then also give me your definition of what is influence. So I'm going to shut up for a little while, give you a moment to write something down. And I like everyone to take part in this, please. I want to see how broad and diverse those definitions are. So you can do, ideally do both, but definitely do one at least. What is authority? What is influence? Let them all come in, then we'll go through. And the word power come up repeatedly. All about power. Some great points here.
Absolutely. I'm just scrolling through them.
So I think that's everyone, right? I'm now going to, before I go through the responses, based on what you've written, not what everybody else has written, by all means read what everybody else has written, but just based on what you've written, I'm curious, what do you rely on? Do you rely on your authority or do you rely on your influence? So again, in the chat, just put A or I. Okay, or you can write the whole word. I was trying to make it easy for everybody. Okay. So I think if we're being honest, we're being truly honest with ourselves. I think publicly, me calling you out, all of us want to say it's influence. All of us want to say, I'm able to influence people with my charisma, my, my expertise in an area. But very often in the work context, we will rely on our authority. So let's look at the responses, and then we'll have a conversation about those responses. So Annie said authority is power, influence is impact. Okay. I think you can be powerful by being influential as well as having impact with authority. So I think the two are interchangeable, but I can see why you phrase it that way, Annie. So thank you for that. Morgan, authority, power to make decisions, final calls. Yeah, to make the absolute final decision. Yeah, definitely. Influence, ability to change the way people think and act. Yeah, I like that. I like that. The ability to change the way people think and act. So they've already got a given mindset. And being able to take them to a different place, right? Authority, power, and decision-making ability. Thank you, Delphine. Moise, power to give orders, direct, be very directive. We had that earlier. Influence, power to make changes without forcing. Yeah. Helping them to be, I always like to think about change when you think about change programs. If you've got influence, then change is not something that's being done to them. It's something that they feel part of. That's having, I think, influence. Whereas power and being directive is, making change happen to somebody else. Authority equals command and control. Yeah, very much so. Very much from the 60s and 70s, that mindset of control, not trusting your people that you work with. Influence, ability to sway decisions, behavior, etc. Authority, power to tell other people how to decide and behave. Yeah, definitely, Emma. Thank you for that. Delphine, influences impact and outcomes. It can be, yeah, but I think it's true for authority too. Andrea, influence, seek to understand others first. Yeah. Goes back to what we were saying earlier with Stephen Covey, isn't it? Seek to understand and then be understood.
Yeah.
So understand what you're dealing with first, understand what the issues are, and then try to have an influence on getting to that place of change. Authority deals with what is being done, influence deals with how it's being done. Okay, I think that does hold water, definitely. Authority definitely deals with the what. This is what needs to happen. Influence can be a bit softer, can't it? This is how I'd like it to be done. Authority, the right to move people towards a desired goal. Yeah, definitely, Stuart. Influence, the ability to move people towards a desired goal. Yeah, I like that. I like that. Very subtle, slight difference. Gonza, authority, ability to use existing policies, guidelines, rules to steer those you lead to what is expected. It's very much around this whole concept of strategy and culture, isn't it? So the strategy might be around policies and processes, where culture is around what really happens, and it's that space where I think you find influence can take on have a much greater impact. So I'll give you an example I shared with my students. So I had this similar conversation with my students. I lecture at university, I lecture on leadership development, and I asked them to tell me what the difference was between authority and influence. And before I did that, I asked them to all stand up, and they all stood up. I asked them to line up. They all lined up. I asked them to all bring me cake the following week. They all started laughing. Now, I know if I'd asked Andrew to bring me cake the following week, I would have ended up with a cake. So Andrew is very, it's a great baker, by the way, which is a side note I should add. Virtually, unfortunately, we won't get that benefit this time. But I asked my students the question, why did you all stand up? Because you're the lecturer, sir. Why did you line up? Because you're the lecturer, sir. And why won't you bring me cake? So we don't have to, sir. And it was recognizing actually I have some authority, and I do. As a lecturer, I can exclude a student. I can get a student in trouble from my line manager from the university. I can even get a student expelled. I have some authority, but I'd have to rely totally on influence to actually get any cake. But in case you're wondering, nobody brought me cake the following week. My influence wasn't, my charisma, my charm wasn't working. But it is a very, fine line. And sometimes, it's being very conscious about, are you asking your people to come with you on the journey? Or are you telling them to come with you on the journey? Because people in authority, both have a place. Authority, can be great, can get you resources, you get decisions made that you need to see happen. But influence requires you to work through people and have them on board and have them on side. And leadership is one of those, amazing things where, and we talked about this the other day when we talked about, social movements. We talked about Black Lives Matter movement. Prior to the Black Lives Matter movement, we've had civil rights leaders like Malcolm X, Martin Luther King Jr., people who were visible leaders of the civil rights movement, but they didn't have as great an influence they had. They didn't lead to any impact. The Million Man March by Martin Luther King, it raised awareness. It did. But were conditions improved for people in America? The George Floyd murder in 2020 showed how little progress had been made. The Stephen Lawrence murder in the UK and the Met Police, which is the Metropolitan in London, is under a large amount of criticism for still being very racist. But yet then you've got now the new civil rights movement, which is led by the Black Lives Matter movement. There's no one visible leader. There's not one person you would look to and say that is the leader there with positional authority. There are leaders there, and and it's becoming an organization structure. But it's being able to influence without authority, being able to change mindsets. Greta Thunberg, whether you agree with her statements or not, a young child, no authority, no positional authority at all. Massive influence on the world stage, massive influence in politics, economic forum, massive influence, period. So I think it's when we think about power and influence, we need to be very, very conscious about using both, not to abuse one or the other, because influence, when you abuse it, can fall into the territory of manipulation. And that's a very dangerous place to be. There's earlier Andrew used the word nudge. And again, there's a great book by Thaler and Castine, I think their names are, if I remember correctly, called Nudge Theory. And nudge theory is around getting people to behave a certain way by making suggestions. Like, I'll give you an example. Saying to you, if you have children, saying to your children, you can go to bed now, or you can go to bed in 10 minutes time. What you want is them to go to bed, but it's the illusion of choice. So you're nudging them to a predetermined outcome, one that you can live with. And that's influencing. And again, I'll stay with the analogy of children because I think it's a powerful one. As a father, when my children were young, I could tell them what to do. I could tell. There would be no question about my authority. As a father, I could tell them exactly, you're going to do this, you're going to do that. You're not allowed to do this, you're not allowed to do that. As they become adolescents, as they become young adults themselves, that authority goes. Now I can only influence them. I still, that comes from a different place. That comes from a place of love, compassion, relationship. That's not from a place of power anymore. If anything, I have no power. I get outvoted. But again, thinking about, in the work context, and I'm going to then be passing over to Andrew, I think, for the next segment. Thinking about influence, what is it you have? I mentioned now as a father, I have love, I have respect. As a lecturer, there is, they call me sir. There's that respect for me as a lecturer. What is the currency that you have? What is the thing that you have that you can trade to get an impact, an outcome that you want to achieve? And it can be your charisma, it can be your, your technical expertise, it can be a number of different things. And with that note, I think it's probably a good time to pass on to yourself, Andrew. Is that right?
Perfect. A fantastic link into currencies. Thank you. And in fact, I didn't, because you've got the group to be talking about the differences between influence and authority. Yeah. And so I didn't go to this slide, but let me just populate it now.
Yeah, please do.
Visually check out what's on the screen now against some of the things that you had put into the chat box. I think there are some really strong parallels indeed. So that's the little group on the left-hand side. And there's the group on the right-hand side. And I think that these are images of what you've put in there and images of the illustrations that Shaquille has just shared with us. Now, I live my life as a consultant, and so working for Humentum is one of the many clients with whom I work. When I'm working with those clients, I actually don't have any authority within them at all. And so the only thing I can ever do is influence and take them in suggested and recommended ways. And the only way I can do that is by using my currencies. And it's that word that Shaquille has now introduced. So currencies, it's the dollar, it's the pound, it's the, it's the yen, it's the whatever it is. We all have individual currencies. Shaquille has very generously said that one of my personal currencies is that I can bake. I baked a Black Forest Gâteau for the family last Sunday for Easter Day. But other currencies I have that I know others will value in me is I can design learning and development programs. So that's part of my professional life. The other thing I am very well known for is my ability to proofread. I have really eagle eyes that can look at a document, look at its formatting, spot typos, all those sorts of things. And so when I'm working in a team, if something's got to go out for publication, I'll be the one who they pass it by last, because I will catch those things before it goes out. So some of my currencies are, I can bake cakes, I'm great at proofreading, I'm great at developing learning and development programs. And I think another word that I would be known for, and Shaquille, please shout it out one way or the other, won't be offended, is I think I'm known for collaboration, that style. I'm going to actually pick up on one for Shaquille that he has already mentioned about himself. And he says he's a great connector, networker. He is indeed. I've seen that happen. Another one at a personal level, I hope you won't mind my sharing this, Shaquille, is, I know he's a fantastic artist. I've seen some of his artwork. It's absolutely brilliant. So that's from his personal life. Shaquille, could you just shout out a couple of the other currencies that you have that people know you for, perhaps more so in a work?
I suppose my humor. I like to bring humor in wherever I can, and that is that's worked great for me, especially when I'm in meetings where it's tense. And there's, you know, I need to change the tone in the room, and it's not being silly. It's trying to find the right moment where you can interject and add something that will make it a little bit more lighthearted, because again, we're all dealing with work and we're all passionate about what we do, especially in our sector, you know, and if you see the good in people, that can be a great starting point. But you know, just having a bit of humor every now and then can keep things,
break the tension. Perfect. Lovely examples. Yeah, super. Thank you for that. So what I'm going to do now is to get Anne to put you into your breakout rooms. You're only going to be in there, and no matter what I've said to you previously, can you just make it 3 minutes for me, please? If you've got time to quickly change that, that would be great. So
yes.
In your groups, thank you, Anne, in your groups for 3 minutes, and your challenge is to create the longest list possible between you of your group's currencies. So just as Shaquille and I have shared some, write down the longest list possible from 3 or 4 people in your room, your currencies. I'm stopping screen sharing, handing over to Anne. See you in 3 minutes.
Yeah, thanks everyone. You stop recording now, Anne.
The room. So as you join, I know there's a couple of groups still out, but they will join us automatically.
Mine is on room 1, simply because they have more people in their room.
Yeah. Oh, room 3. Yeah, room 3. They're back. Yeah, people are back now. Right. Okay, so as you rejoin the main room, do 2 things for me. Would somebody in your group count up the number of items in your list, please? And would somebody please post your list into the chat box, so we just get a sense of all of the currencies. Just let that happen. I'm looking at the lovely, here they come, fantastic. I can see you've clearly got the idea for me. That's brilliant. So we've got in one room there were 5 main areas, but then lovely, being friendly, being so approachable, and then there were a couple of examples around that. Well, I like the way you've set this out.
Oh, wow.
Technical skills, right? Fantastic. Another group's talked about humor, conviction, empathy, kindness, caring, reacted to humor, so there's a thumbs up on that. Another group has talked about lovely speaking, so oral skills, being detail oriented, planning, nurturing, collaboration, being a good teacher, a great connector, jokes and laughter, being perfection, artist, great cook, storytelling. Oh, that's one of my favorite things because it helps people understand. Singing, numbers, proofreading, lovely, and lots of positive reactions that have come up there as well. So I think that's begun to build on what Shaquille had been taking you through. Our currencies are basically things that we value in ourselves and things that others value in us. I'm just going to mute somebody because there's a bit of background noise, so hopefully that has taken that away. So something I value in myself and something that others value in me. And the reason for needing to recognize that is that resources can be exchanged, traded, but that sounds a little bit mercenary, but there is that trade essence. And that it's actually the basis for acquiring influence. So in terms of work, there are things that I have that other people may need, and they may need to call upon at some time. Let me start to screen share again. Go there. Yeah, correct one. So you've just done that group work, and look where that bounces into. This is a quotation. The most influential people are the people who do the most for others. So could that be true? I would suggest, on the basis of what we've just been covering, it is true, because I don't see this quite as a bank account. It's not that every time I freely give something to somebody, I go, right, that's one that you owe me back. But I do it in the spirit of, I genuinely do it in the spirit of, do you know what? If I give generously because somebody else is valuing my skill, it's making a difference to how they deliver their work. That means that they will shine better in their work. And the chances are from them or somewhere else, when I need to ask a favour of somebody else, it will come back to me. And I think that fits in very neatly with this particular picture that we have here in front of us right now. The most influential people are the people who do the most for others. So let's look at how this exchange might play out. And here I'm referencing something called the Cohen-Bradford influence model. If you look that up, you will find that readily. Oh, I've lost my chat box. It does disappear. I love Shaquille, you're asking the person to sing and close out the day. Right, you're on. That's lovely. So let's take a look at the Cohen-Bradford model. You will see that it is a cycle, and you can see that the entry point is with this statement: assume that everyone with whom you're going to interact are potential allies. Now, I don't mean that we should do that naively, because there are tricky characters and customers out there. I know that. However, if we go into life and exchanges and negotiations, assuming a negative outcome, well, if I ask them for that, they won't do it for me. They'll say they haven't got time to let me have a team member. Guess what? That's probably the result that you will get. But if you go into that assuming that everyone is a potential ally and potentially will come good for you, the chances are, so it affects your demeanor, it affects the way you approach it. In fact, optimism was one of the things that was in the list of currencies that I saw in the chat box. So I think that then shapes the way we behave. Let me pick up my annotate pen again, my spotlight. Here we go. So we've now entered at that point. What we then need to do in the other party is to clarify, is with the other party, to clarify our goals and priorities, what we need. And it's almost setting out up front what we are going to be saying to them, because that's the way we're going to get them to deliver, help deliver with and for us. What we then also need to do, though, is to think about them and their world. And remember the bit that Shaquille was doing with you in relationship to your manager, thinking about their pressures and their priorities. Well, here, it might not be your manager that you're thinking about, but you still need to diagnose the world of the other. And you can do that probably by observation, but maybe you could just ask them, because you might need to find the right time to do this. And today or this week might not be the right time. But if you hold it back and you ask next week or next month, there might be a window of opportunity there. So diagnose the world of the other. You need to identify the things that they've got that you need, the skill, the time, the expertise, the things that you've got that you can give for them. You then need to have that conversation to deal with that relationship, try and find that way forward. And as a result of it, you may find that somebody says, well, I'd love to help you. I'd love to help you on your project, but we're really busy on X, Y, and Z. And you might be able to say, I know you are, that you've got some expertise I really need on this piece of work that I'm doing. However, I can free up a bit of time from my team to do that. And so try and find a way of actually getting that influence through give and take. So that, in a nutshell, is the Cohen-Bradford influence model. You know, like any cyclical image, it's not always quite as neat and tidy as that. You may kind of have to do a bit of going forward and then stepping back before you can move forward. I've also suggested, particularly with the diagnose the world of the other, thinking about the timing of this ask might be a better time for it. So bear that in mind and therefore park it and come back to it. So I would encourage you very much to have a think about that particular model. Now, the words on my next slide are useful, but I also want to take you to the workbook again, and I might just have to find the page in just a moment or two. So everything that I've been working, that Shaquille has been working with you on, and I just now around currencies, it all comes down to what's your goal? Who do you need to influence? What's important to them? So if there are only 3 questions that you take away from this today around influence, they are key and critical questions. Now, let me just stop sharing that for a moment. Let me find my workbook minimized somewhere here. Let me just find it again. Ah, there it is. Got it. Right. Okay. So hang on. Let me. I'm not sure I'm sharing it.
Yeah, you are. We
Am
can
I
see
sharing
it.
currencies? Right, thank you for that.
Yeah.
That's really helpful. Thank you. So on page 18, you will find really some words and some boxes. It's effectively what we've just taken you through around authority versus influence and currencies. But on page 19, you will find then an activity that I'm going to ask you to do in your own time. Okay, so Anne, I'm not calling out for another group work at this stage of the 90 minutes. Anne, okay, if you can just give me a thumbs up on the screen, that would be great. So no other breakout room today. Thank you, Anne. What instead I'm doing is pointing out to you as a group right now, this page 19, and I would like you to go away over the weekend and have a think about something that you need to influence around. Jot down here in this column, what is your goal? Let me get my highlighter pen again, spotlight, that one. What's the goal? And it's back to this question, those 3 questions on the screen I just shared with you. Who do you need to influence? And I often think of this a little bit like a stakeholder analysis, you know, all of those people up, down, across, in different departments. What's important to them? A few notes. Nobody else is going to see this page, but it will just galvanize your thinking. And then some notes about what's the give and take, which is where I've just been with you around Bradford Cohen model. How can you align your goals with theirs? Where's that give and take? So that's the first piece that you might like to do. You don't need to spend very long on it. And in fact, I would almost suggest, you know, just a few minutes, write a few things down and then come back next week and take another look at what you've written down. And you may well be able to develop it from there. Got a feeling this exercise extends to the next page. Let me just take another look at it. You may also then look at the flip side of the same coin. So who does your person also need to influence? And what is important to them, which is the next layer down the chain? And how can you align your goal with their goals? So you might like to have a look at those 2 pages. Excuse me, I'm going to cough. 19 and 20 in your main workbook. At this stage, I will stop screen sharing that. I'm going to come back momentarily to the PowerPoint slide. She says, there it is. That's where we were just now. It's now 27 minutes past the hour. Would you like to just pop into the chat in order to finish this? Any of your main takeaways? And I can see that Shaquille has sent out a challenge to the room. Will be Frank Sinatra's "And Now the End is Near, and So to Face the Final Curtain." So yes, I don't know if we have any singers in there. So into the chat box, if you will, just write me down a couple of phrases. What are your main takeaways from this first from this session today? Thank you, Emma. That's lovely. Stuart, lovely. Some comments coming in about the choice. Yeah, so what are your main takeaways? And then we've done for today. You're now stuck thinking about songs, aren't you? I know what it is.
Sorry, Andrea.
Yeah, this is your fault. I'm going to pan back over to you and make you close the day out. Actually, yes, kind of semi-seriously. Shaquille, you're lovely. Hang on, we've got Edson. The most influential people are the people who do the most for others. So that's really landed with you, has it, Edson? Thank you. Thank you. That's great. Yeah, generosity of spirit will come back more often in multiplied ways, is my experience of life, without me being naive, because I'm certainly not naive. Great. Lovely. Thank you very much. Bree, I can see your comments coming in. So, Shaquille, I know you're not joining us on Monday. I am going to pick up with you. Oh, lovely, Gonza, you've got, yeah, Trust coming in on the back of the turtle and going out on a galloping stallion. Yeah, it just runs away, doesn't it? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You're picking up some real great takeaway phrases. The impact of currencies on influence. Stuart, thank you. Right, great. You've got some great takeaways. So, session then on Monday is going to be understanding yourself and others. So we're beginning to step into the world of the individuals, not the whole team, but the individuals with whom we work. On that note, I'm going to say thank you so much for all of your hard work this week, and have a great weekend. Take care now. Bang on time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. You're welcome, everyone. You're